Again, thank you everyone for joining us for Tech Field Day. My name's Tom Rose. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Nasuni. I'm going to first do a quick introduction to Nasuni and talk about why so many organizations are using our Enterprise File Services platform to store, protect, synchronize, and collaborate on files at cloud scale. So what we've been finding is that we're really at the intersection of four market dynamics, which is really driving our business. First off is that we're seeing file storage grow very, very fast, obviously. The latest stats from IDC show it's growing 10 times faster than block storage. At the same time, we're seeing more and more enterprises wanting to share files in different regions across the world. The world's getting smaller. We're in the internet economy. People want to take advantage of lower cost workforces, lower cost skill sets. They need to move files to where the people are. They need to move these workloads to take advantage of these economics. So this is another big driver we're seeing as enterprises become more distributed. Third, files are just getting bigger. We're seeing this across a lot of our architecture and construction customers when they're dealing with AutoCAD or Revit or these BIM models that are growing in size every year. We're seeing the same thing with Adobe Creative Cloud applications like Illustrator and Photoshop and InDesign. Those files and the images they work with are also exploding in size. Obviously, video, audio, what we're doing right now is also driving increasing in file size. Same thing with healthcare images, which are increasing in fidelity every year. And then the last big dynamic is enterprises want to move to the cloud. They want to embrace the economics of the cloud model. They want to move out of the infrastructure data center business and move more of their workloads into the cloud. So all four of these things are really conspiring to drive the need for Nasuni's product. And it's really why our customer base is growing so rapidly. So at the same time we have these four market forces happening, there's also a very important enabling technology that's driving our business. It's object storage. And Nasuni's been around for about 8.5 years. In the early days of Nasuni, object storage was still unfamiliar. I think you guys know it, you covered it. Not a lot of the enterprise IT organizations really understood it well, and there weren't as many choices. Now there are. You've got great public cloud choices like AWS, S3, Azure Blob Storage, IBM Public Cloud now, Google. You've got all the now the private cloud object storage offerings for customers that don't quite want to move their data into the public cloud, but they do want to embrace the scale of object storage in their own data centers. And so you've got Dell EMC ECS, you've got Hitachi, you've got IBM Cloud Object Storage, formerly CleverSafe, you've got Western Digital HGST. Nasuni supports all these platforms now. Actually, Google's the one we're adding right now. So you've got this infinite pools of low-cost, durable, geo-replicated capacity available now. But one thing's been missing, a file system. So you look back at what made block storage suitable for files. Since the dawn of file storage, it's been the file system, right? You've had FAT, NTFS, NetApp did an amazing job with the early versions of with Waffle, and then the ONTAP operating system, bringing high-performance file sharing to block. We had now the clustered file systems with Isilon, OneFS, and GPFS being able to leverage a clustered set of devices and increase the scale. But what's missing now is that file system designed for object storage. That's really the crux of what Nasuni's built. That's our core IP. We've built the first global file system designed to live in and scale in cloud object storage. We call it UniFS, and it's a patented technology. And because it lives within object storage and is not bound by an individual disk system or a controller or a cluster, it scales infinitely. Infinite file size, infinite volume size, infinite directory size. There are no limits. John, anything you want to add to that?
No, we'll get to some of it later, but really just think of that as the critical enabling technology of Nasuni. That's at the core of everything. There are a bunch of services we put on top of that, but it's really the file system, and we'll talk more about why that's special in a little bit.
And you'll see also why we call it a global file system, because it can also scale an infinite number of locations as well, and that's the other key differentiator for us. So that's really what it is. So Nasuni, we are the cloud era global file system that allows users, it's one place. Our customers call it the big file server. It's the place we can put all our files from all locations and have access to it anywhere. So, those trade-offs, and this comes back to the understanding of object storage versus traditional file storage. IT has been forced to make a trade-off. Again, with traditional file storage systems, you get that LAN level performance, you get great app compatibility, you get built-in features like snapshots and locking, but the con is it's expensive to scale it up, it's costly, and it's hard to manage if I have to manage all these different appliances and file servers and NAS devices. You could go with modern object storage to get that great economics, the low cost, infinite scale, accessible anywhere, and I have less infrastructure. But now I have things like cloud latency. I've got limited app compatibility. I've got to rewrite for S3. I don't have that familiar file and folder structure. Object is a flat address space. That's why it scales. But it's not that familiar file system that users are used to dealing with. So what Nasuni is all about is taking the best of all worlds. When you combine our global file system with the object storage of your choice, you get the best of both worlds. You get all the advantages of traditional file storage, high-speed access, app compatibility, snapshots, locking, taking to the next level. But you also get all the scale, cost advantages, accessibility of modern object storage. We're uniting the best of both worlds. And so that's really the crux of our platform, right? So we have this base platform that's all centered around UniFS, our global file system at the core. And then what's also unique about UniFS is that we have the ability to extend ourselves out through what we call edge appliances to any location. These edge appliances can be physical. We offer Dell white box appliances to our customers. More and more we're seeing these appliances be virtual, running on either VMware Hyper-V or Nutanix Acropolis. We're seeing a lot of customers deploy us with Nutanix. And these appliances, there's no charge to them. You can have as many as you want. You can put them anywhere you want. They can even live in the cloud. We have some customers that have now our edge appliances living in Azure or as Amazon EC2 instances. So, but most often we see a hybrid cloud deployment where they've got our file system in the cloud and they have edge appliances locally in the offices.
So what is the licensing model? Is it based on number of files?
Terabytes under management.
Of used
pure
storage.
terabytes. Yep.
And that's regardless of architecture, how distributed it is?
Exactly. We don't care. We don't charge for edge appliances. We don't charge for that. It's just usable capacity.
Usable, is that replicated?
No.
Capacity? No?
Usable core capacity, it can be replicated as many times on the edge as you want.
And you don't pay for that?
And you don't pay for that. You just pay for the usable core capacity.
Okay, all right.
You pay for us per terabyte. You pay for your favorite cloud storage. That's it.
Is there a
But
minimum?
you do have to pay for the storage at each location where it replicates to.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have a minimum deployment size?
We target, in terms of how we go to market, we target 30 terabytes.
They're around 30 terabytes, yeah. Yeah, and that's actually a good point you
That's
raised.
grown
You asked about.
substantially. It's like, that's grown substantially. You guys started off aiming a lot lower.
As our customers have grown too, yeah.
Yeah, customer. Yeah. And actually, these appliances. It's important to talk about the appliances. Typically, they're sized. They're right sized to fit the active file workloads. So those appliances cache only the active files, and typically it's about 1/5 your active file set. So as a lot of our customers say, it's like fitting 20 pounds of potatoes into a 4-pound bag. Typically, those appliances are 1/5 the size of a regular NAS device or a file server to still give you that fast local access. Because we're a cloud service, we can look across all of our customers. Do we know what the stats are? Our average hit rate, because of the caching algorithms we have, is close to 99%. So that means you're always getting local LAN speed access to your files, even though you have the infinite capacity of the cloud behind you. And if you're in a public cloud model, you're not paying egress charges to pull those files down from the cloud. So it's a great model for customers that want, again, the best of both worlds.
Wait a minute. How do you manage no egress charges?
No, so I think what we meant to say was we can minimize those egress charges. So when we look at our customers and their activity on the file system, what we found is that the egress charges compared to if you're going direct to cloud are significantly lower. So
Sure, because it's just
all in cache.
because so much of it is in
file,
cache, yeah.
But you're still deleting files from whatever that cloud provider
You
is.
still have transactions between them. That's
Yeah,
right.
it still is. Yeah.
That's
It's just that we've really
Okay.
minimized it with these
Just making
intelligent.
sure I understood what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the other side, we have a management console that John's going to go into a little more detail on and show you some of that. Our management console allows you to manage your shares, your volumes, your protocols, your restores, all through one central interface. So instead of having, again, to point and shoot at every device, you can manage them all as a collection. So hundreds of those appliances can now be managed as one. And we also have a REST API now that's allowing us to be orchestrated by external platforms and also instrumented by syslog and other kinds of tools as well.
So can you do a single policy for everything?
Okay, so that's the base platform. Then we're offering 2 standard services, both of which drag this base with them. We have a lot of customers that say, you know what, I'm not quite ready to trust the cloud or object storage for my active everyday files. I want to start just with archive. I want to put the files I'm not, I don't need to touch often. But what I still want is that rapid retrieval if it's needed. And I still want to have that ubiquitous access through CIFS and RNFS that we offer. That's the Nasuni Archive service. And then we have a lot of our customers, of course, this is what we're known for, is on the primary side, is using us to replace traditional NAS and file servers and storing your everyday workflow, your everyday files with Nasuni Primary. And not only are we replacing file servers and NAS devices, but you're also going to see that because our file system is a continuously versioning file system, we also eliminate the need for third-party data protection, backup tools. We also eliminate the need for dedicated DR sites, because with all of our metadata and files being stored in object storage, you can deploy one of those appliances in less than 15 minutes anywhere you've got power and cloud connectivity. You can even do it in the cloud if you want. And in less than 15 minutes, we will rehydrate all those appliances with the metadata and the files, and you've got your files back. So the need for dedicated DR is history. So when you look at the cost of DR and backup and the file servers and NAS, all that going away, that's why not only are we providing greater scale and capability, but we're also at a much, much lower cost than what you're paying for today.
Tom, how would you deal with something with ransomware then? If you're saying you don't have to worry about backup.
It's actually a great story because we're continuously versioning, capturing the delta changes that are making every time you change a file. And we're capturing every file change as an infinite file history in Worm. That's an immutable copy of every single file. So now my recovery point can be literally minutes before. In fact, we just had this experience with our PowerPoint. It saved our butt because we're using our product internally. Have you guys ever seen that PowerPoint bug where all the graphics the references go away and you have no images anymore? We got hit by that, so we had to roll back. And fortunately, we snapshot our file system every few minutes. So we were able to recover right to the point before we lost that. So that's what you do with ransomware. You can recover right to the point before the ransomware hit, and you haven't lost much. So your RTOs and RPOs are actually much better than standard incremental backups and full backups. Okay, and then on top of these two main service, question?
Is that through an orchestrated, like a script through RESTful API? Is that how those snapshots are managed?
It's through policies, yeah. You'll get into more.
Yeah, it's actually it's integrated into each of the appliances, and then we'll talk, especially when we get to the
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to see the
see it.
management.
Yeah, we'll do the NMC.
We'll get there, I'm sure.
You can see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
This archive and primary, that's just two services all being delivered from the same platform, is that right?
Customers can buy both, or they can buy one or
Got it.
the other. Yep. And then we've got premium services now that we're offering. Synchronize is our premium service that extends both primary or archive to multiple sites. So this allows you now with primary storage to have multi-site file sharing and version alignment. You'll see more of that in a second. And on the archive side, if I want to have multi-site read and write archives, Synchronize provides that for me as well. And I'm going to give you examples and show you what that looks like in a second. And then our other premium service is Nasuni Collaborate. That's that Delta flight attendant purple I was talking about. For those of you who are flying Delta now. That applies global file locking, so I can now have multiple editors in multiple locations without worrying about version conflict. So I'll take you through more of that in detail. So let's look at one of the first use cases, right? So this is the most common one. I want to replace my NAS and file servers with a cloud-first solution. So what we do is we say, okay, let's ingest all these files off the edge, store them in your favorite cloud storage, whether it's public or on-premises. And now that I've got it all there, our edge appliances allow you then to push those files back out to all those locations where they can still be accessed at local LAN speed. But now I've got everything consolidated to one place, easy to manage, all safely backed up, multiple versions captured. So who's doing that? Cushman & Wakefield's a good example of that. That's the case study you guys have. Second largest commercial real estate company in the world. Just finished a deep dive analysis on cost savings with them. They've rolled us out now into all their EMEA locations, and they've been able to turn off backup. They've been able to end-of-life NAS devices and file servers. They now don't have dedicated colos for DR anymore. So they are turning off all those services I talked about because they now have Azure with geo-replicated storage and Nasuni as their global file system. So this is a good example of, and they're able to rapidly turn on new offices, acquire new companies, and just stick one of these appliances out there and get it hydrated really fast. So it's also very good for M&A and office expansion, which they're doing. You probably see these guys everywhere. They're based in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing that with all public cloud offerings.
That's all
We're
done.
only getting Google in right now.
Yeah, that's with Azure Azure storage. Yeah, you'll see the cloud provider in the lower right corner there. Next one is multi-site synchronization. So what about customers that say, well, you know what? I have these Illustrator or CAD files that I need to synchronize across many locations. So it's not just consolidating the edge with giving each person, each office their own file storage. These are where I have to really share. And today, what they're doing is they're replicating. We're using WAN acceleration or using Riverbed to try to replicate files back and forth. We see a lot of customers shipping hard drives still around with files. We see a lot of customers using FTP sites and doing shadowware, Dropbox and Box, shadow IT deployments. So on this side, you're talking a lot of cost. On that side, you're talking a loss of productivity because those things just take forever. A lot of latency involved.
Just a quick question on the previous slide. Can
Yeah.
you just jump back to it?
Yeah.
So this is multiple Nasuni virtual appliances running in different Microsoft availability zones?
Yes.
And they're just all cross-replicating, are they? Using
Not exactly.
Nasuni?
Not exactly. So on the edge, you have the appliances. And
Okay.
so inside of the offices of Cushman & Wakefield, you have the appliances. They have a couple
Oh,
of
so they have a physical edge appliance
Yes.
and then they're replicating
or virtual
to-
one inside,
Right,
but
okay.
at the edge. And then those are replicating back to a data center of their choice. The volume lives in the data center that you choose. And so you would pick a volume or a data center that's usually close to you, but if you need to share that volume with others, you might pick a data center that is relatively close to all the endpoints that are shared.
And that's an Azure
That's an Azure data center.
data center. All right,
So
got it.
the real key here is you get so much flexibility when it comes to governance and when it comes to where data sovereignty needs to be managed. So all the GDPR stuff, exactly. You can think of it as like I can choose my data center and then where the data from that data center appears on the
Right.
edge.
And that's blob storage that they're using in
Blob
Azure.
Azure Blob.
Correct.
And what is responsible for the replication? Is it blob replication through Azure, or is it Nasuni doing the replication?
So when we talk about replication, or when we're not talking about replication of the back-end object stores. There's
Okay.
one back-end object store. We recommend that you choose GRS, which does its own replication in the back. So you go from 3 copies in a zone to 6 copies. But from the device, from the edge appliance to the object store, that's us. And that's
Okay.
what we do. We call it our snap and syncs, but
Okay,
where that comes from.
understood. Got it.
Great. Yep. So let's. So this is where I really want to synchronize now Adobe Illustrator
that
across
particular-
multiple sites. So again, I'm consolidating
that particular-
Illustrator with my other files again centrally in these volumes.
Don't advance the slide, Tom.
Yep. Okay.
Ray's got a question first.
That particular volume only lives in one of the appliances?
no, the volume lives in a data center, and so in one of the object stores that you choose. Yeah, inside the object store. The volume itself can appear in as many appliances as you want.
Without the sync solution?
No, that's part of what the Nasuni
Yeah, wasn't a single namespace across multiple locations part of primary? Did you guys just
Yep, nope, that's
move that out to sync?
So let's say here's the cloud, right?
Right.
And then we're going to choose a data center and we're going to put a volume there. That is the object store we choose. So let's call this US East,
Yeah.
right? That is our namespace. That can be accessed by any appliance that has access to that location.
Right. That's how I understood it.
Yep.
So what's the
And-
sync solution?
And
Where's-
so I'm confused about what synchronize is compared to prime.
Oh.
'cause-
What primary says, I can have one place, one location, one appliance.
Right.
Actually, 2 appliances because we allow for a DR. 2 appliances maximum to a volume. Synchronize says I can have n number of appliances to a volume. So if
Okay.
you want to synchronize across multiple
I
locations.
remember it as N. Am I remembering it wrong?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. We've just separated it out so we can be more competitive with.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
the
you
reason why is think about
you pulled the multi-access
We pulled-
out
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you could reduce the cost of primary.
You got it.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, because we had a lot of customers
Exactly
coming
right.
back, like
Yeah,
Cushman
no,
Wakefield,
'cause
saying,
that's
I don't
very
need
new.
to synchronize multiple
Yeah.
locations. I just want to have.
No,
I just want to have fun. This is
I'm just
important.
confused because it looks like primary didn't have the features that it used to have. And
Which is true. Right.
And-
Right.
yeah.
You're absolutely right about that.
okay,
Yeah, so a lot of customers say, look, I have NAS devices, I've got file servers, each providing each office with their own local storage. I want to replace that with a cloud solution, that's primary.
right.
And then I jump to this next use case where I do need to synchronize across many locations.
Right.
And that's what I want to do here with the synchronize added on top of that, right? So now And the important way of how we're doing this is we're using public internet links to do this synchronization. So we're offloading the private WAN and MPLS from all this file transfer traffic. So that's really helping a lot of our customers also.
Okay.
And a good example of a customer doing this is EA. But go ahead, you have a question.
Go back.
Yep.
So I got a couple of questions, detailed questions about sync.
Go ahead, yeah.
So UniFS creates a namespace with root folders.
Yep.
And some branch of that namespace is owned by each office.
Branch of the namespace is owned by each.
So I have root, I have New York, San Francisco, Chicago. The users in New York access folders under New York. The users in Chicago access folders under Chicago. Is kind of the normal way you would set this up. It's not required, I understand.
Yep.
But can I do push? Can I say this subfolder, whenever any change happens here, update the edge device in these other 3 offices because those people are going to need it right away?
You can have auto cache to do that.
Yeah,
You can we can also pin so that things don't evict from the caches as well.
Right.
And so there are different ways you can control and manage those things. The other thing on top of that, just to be clear about this, the namespace is for us a volume, and that volume is a container, like either a bucket in the AWS.
Right, on the back end, I'm just
Yeah.
looking at how it's presented to
And
the
then-
user side. It's going to be a file system.
It's a file system, and it could be the shares, no matter where you want those shares to live from. Exactly.
And then, okay.
Right. Okay, and that's how Electronic Arts is using Nasuni to synchronize their game builds across other locations. So EA has gone to a follow the sun development and test model for FIFA Soccer and for other games, starting when the sun rises in the Far East, and then it moves across as in their offices in Singapore and Romania, Germany, all the way to the US, and then I think ending in either Seattle or Vancouver. So that the key is how do they take these game builds and then move them across sites so that they can be tested more frequently. And Nasuni has been the answer. So they're using Amazon S3 object storage with our edge appliances in each of these locations, synchronizing these big workloads across the world. And what are we up to now in terms of petabytes? We're close to a petabyte now.
So I think I'm supposed to stand up whenever I talk with
okay.
you. No, right here. But we are almost a petabyte when it comes to the total amount that's stored inside of their environment. They look at the total amount that they use in the environment by the number of builds that show up on the edge. And again, there's about 28 different locations. They talk about in terms of an exabyte in the system, an exabyte that flows through the system. So there's a lot of data. Every single game build through EA is going through Nasuni. And just as a quick point on this, so let's look at how they would have done this before, right? I've got 4 here instead of 28. They were trying to connect each of these locations with each other, right? This is a mesh network. This is very, very hard to manage. This is impossible to scale. This is not a mesh network. This is hub and spoke. That's what we do. And that's why they've been able to scale so quickly with us.
And I think the latest metric
It also
we saw,
says something to me about the edge device performance that.
And we've done a lot of optimization there too for that.
yeah. So I think they've gone from, I think they said 3 game builds a day testing to 100. So it's a massive increase, which of course is great for their business because better quality means better reviews. Yeah. Better reviews means better sales. So.
As far as the object storage being replicated, that's something that is done outside of Nasuni, or is that something you've done with Nasuni, or how does that play out?
Object storage being replicated automatically.
Oh, okay. So that goes back to that GRS question. Oh, I got to stand up. Sorry about that. So that goes back to the GRS thing from before. With Microsoft, they will do that replication in the back end, and they give us the same endpoint. So they technically do this 3 copies in one location and replicate the 3 copies to another location and still give us that same endpoint. We can support that. We have customers who use Amazon who do replication on their own. That is not something that we easily support today because we have to change the location of the object or the container or the bucket that we're targeting. So with Azure, with GRS, easy to support because it's always one namespace and they obscure the transaction behind them. With AWS, they make you do the failover yourself, and that's where it gets a little tricky for us. guys have anything on that one?
Yeah, so I think just to articulate this a little bit better, the best way to think about
Stand up, Pat.
the best way to think about this is that the UniFS file system, the authoritative copy, lives in the cloud, right? The cache devices are more like thin provisions to that cloud, or they're viewing that data differently based on the usage patterns of the edge appliance. The word replicate is maybe not the right word. It's more pulled into the right place or hydrated at the edge, cached. That's probably the right way to
It's
talk
a cache from cloud
Yeah,
model.
but, the object storage itself can be or cannot be replicated so that you have, a certain amount of data protection in the object storage itself.
The question is, I think,
On the back end.
on the very, very back end,
Yes.
the canonical data is managed by the object store, and we rely on the cloud service providers' protections
Yes.
to
Yeah.
have the additional copies necessary.
And today, out of the box, we support GRS because they provide one endpoint for all of that, and they do the failover. AWS provides two endpoints, and that's what we don't have an automatic way of failing over to.
So when S3 goes down, things get exciting.
When S3, for everyone, I think. But yes, there are ways in which we can stitch it back and things like that, but it's not in.
But again, that comes back to a lot of our our hit rate is 99%. So typically, customers are almost always going to those edge appliances for their files. So
And-
last AWS disruption, our customers, there were no support calls coming in.
And I can write to that edge appliance while
While that's
S3 is
happening.
down.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
That's the key difference between and what Dropbox is like when S3 is down.
Correct.
Yes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Now, the question would be, if I want to go belt, suspenders, parachute, glue, the whole bit, and I want to have my data in Azure and in AWS, can we use the Nasuni synchronization to stand up an instance on both?
Not the way you're thinking of it. No,
Okay.
I don't think. So
Yeah.
you can have data in both. You can't have the same volume in both.
Okay, so I can use separate volumes and separate data stores from the
Yes.
same management
Yeah.
console.
You can manage your risk that way.
Right.
Yeah, and when you have to keep
That
your
one.
data in Liechtenstein, you use whichever cloud provider is in Liechtenstein because
Exactly.
there's only one.
Right.
It's not big enough to have two.
Then use Zero.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Actually, I'm
Okay,
glad you
and-
guys asked that question about, that's something I'm not sure if I really hammered that home. The differentiator around UniFS is that the authoritative gold copy is the cloud.
Yeah.
It's the object storage, right? Our metadata and files live there. You can think of those appliances almost as stateless. They're stateless appliances that can be spun up just to provide a window into the object storage.
Okay.
And that's the difference from the other guys that a lot of customers call it the upside down file system, whereas everybody else has built a file system to live in a device or controller and use the cloud as backup. We flip that around.
Okay, couple of questions. You guys used to sell the object storage as part of the service. I gather that's no longer true.
Yeah.
Not for new customers.
Okay.
We still have some legacy in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's again, I think, back to where we were a little bit ahead of our time.
Yeah,
And yeah.
If I do have this multinational Liechtenstein problem, can you present one namespace with multiple volumes stored in multiple countries because I've got data sovereignty issues?
Not as one namespace as we would define it. No.
Can
But it would be
one
controlled
can one edge device offer shares
Yes.
out of
Yes.
multiple volumes?
Up to multiple.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Not the way I want it to be, but good enough.
Yes.
One of these can go to AWS.
It really looks like
You
it,
can maintain control.
but we don't have unique inodes.
data.
Yeah.
And if you're using synchronization across multiple edge devices, is that read-write access across multiple devices?
You have your choice.
And if the cloud goes down in that scenario, how do you manage the potential
Conflict.
compatibility issues and all that,
Never
integrity problems?
Yep. So we have conflict files. If there's in that case, we'll talk later about the Cloud Volume Manager, which lines up all.
Global
of the,
Volume Manager.
Sorry, Global Volume Manager. I can't believe I did. I can't believe I did that. Sorry.
Did you guys rename that recently?
No. He did it in his head.
I did, and I now I'm stuck with it. I can't get out. Yeah. Global Volume Manager. We'll line those up. And when that when anything is down, then they
Does
can't.
that handle
You continue to
versioning
write to the
as well as erasure code as well?
to the volumes or to the shared volumes.
Timestamp.
But you'll see conflict files.
And it's last writer wins, and you generate a conflict file to tell me.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That-
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
There is another mode, which we're about to get to, I think, on Collaborate, where you have a global file lock that's turned on. And if global file locking is turned on, that prevents those conflicts from happening. So it's a little bit different.
Right, but also prevents you from actually doing anything when you're offline.
Right. The owner is the owner, exactly. The owner is the owner, and that local file lock propagates to any other location that has
Where
a.
that particular file resides.
Where in that particular file resides. And it's a little bit different because that is at a folder level, not at a volume level. So you can be more specific about what you are locking.
And that's ACLs, based on Active Directory.
Yes, yep.
Okay,
It's the file. You can't
No.
go to NFS.
no, file locks aren't ACLs.
Yeah, I was saying it's not.
ACLs are different.
I'm just wondering where the rights are assigned.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let me just, I'll articulate that. Yeah, it's actually CIFS locking, like semantics, like share open, share deny, CIFS SMB.
SMB.
Yeah, we support both. Yeah, it's locking semantics from the client in the protocol.
Okay.
We extend that across devices or appliances. And that,
But again, access has to be controlled initially from somewhere. And that would be Active Directory.
In that case,
yep,
yep.
absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct.
And if I remember right, they're NTFS-like ACLs, not Unix-like ACLs.
Oh,
You're extended.
NTFS ACLs, we also have NFS. We support POSIX ACLs on
NFS.
So.
Yeah, so that was a good segue actually to the our last service, which is collaboration, right? So we talked before about synchronizing the same file across many locations, but what if I have users who may be in different time zones or regions or locations that want to be working on the same file at the same time? And in the current situation here, this user down here could be editing that file, and then with the other mechanisms, there's no way to know if the other users are working on the same version at the same time. So again, with Nasuni and all of our services now aligned, primary, synchronize, and collaborate, when I've got Adobe Illustrator here, now because our global file lock is implemented as a scalable cloud service that can span locations, and now when I've got Illustrator out there, I've got this person editing the file, and it's locked there, these users will get that notification saying, sorry, it's already being edited, you should wait till it's, or open up a read-only copy.
Now,
What's
what's the latency on? Sorry.
question I was asking, go.
And the latency on the lock propagation, because this is the classic problem.
Yep.
We both started within a very short span of time to go. We came into the office, we started working, boom. We've got a
guys wanna
lock
get up and answer that?
conflict.
Do you guys want to talk about the latency and how this could be an opportunity to talk about asynchronous.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, well.
Come on, take the
guess
marker,
I'll
do
try.
some whiteboard.
This was supposed to be the last thing we were going to talk about, but we'll do it
we're
after.
talking about the latency of propagation of the
Specifically the
lock.
lock in this.
lock across sites. So we target around 60 milliseconds. That's usually what we see. Some customers are outside those bounds. Some actually have much better networks. So it is somewhat dependent on their network
Is that
infrastructure.
edge device to edge device, or is there
Edge
some
device to the-
object created that the edge
through-
device is checked to see that's a lock?
Right, so there's another service that we run in the cloud that orchestrates locks. That service is redundant. It has failover.
Okay, so when I open a file, the edge
Yeah.
device says "Mother, may I?"
Correct.
And it's that 60 milliseconds from
And-
appliance to lock service.
Right, from the first guy who opens it, going deny everybody else till
Yep.
Right, and that depends on the lock semantics that were requested by the client, right? So you can open write only, write, but share read. A lot of different sort of options there. We've spent a lot of time coalescing or making these sort of lock requests to our lock server, optimize that. Because there's many
apologize
many
for
applications
60
go back and forth, lock
You're
this,
good.
unlock that, read, write, and they're very chatty.
Yeah.
I'm actually particularly proud of a lot of this work the team's done, coalescing a lot of that work and caching the locks at the edge, right? So if I ask for a lock, I get it requested, I do some changes, I unlock. We actually hold on to that lock a little longer, try to buffer some of that rights because we see, or sorry, those requests. We see a lot of applications kind of being very chatty, so
Do you
we
hold,
try to reduce a lot of that latency and that pain that happens, just from normal apps.
okay, if it's a large file, do you hold the lock until the data is written from the edge device back up to the core?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, it's application dependent, but that's generally how they.
Yeah,
would
no, I mean,
file.
we're talking
Yep.
about
Yep.
applications that do open exclusive read-write,
Yep.
close, probably write to a temp file, delete the original file, rename the temp file, all of that crap.
Right. So along with the locks and unlocking the lock, you need to, the payload of the data needs to also
Right, no,
go to the core. And
unlocking before the data's in the core would be bad.
That's when you get the race conditions.
so,
Okay.
absolutely.
And collaborates extra charge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
But that's what you knew was the oldest Nasuni, which was all in one.
You didn't really do collaborate. Penzura did that, you guys didn't.
We've had that. We've had that. Well, they also have a device-only lock. So there's a difference there as they're device-based. So there's scale issues there, whereas we're a cloud service.
Oh, I'm not saying they're good, I'm just.
How long have we had that? 2 years?
Global file lock is since 6.2.
Oh, it's been
6.0.
24.
That's how long it's
Before
been
I got
since we
there,
Yeah,
bridged.
but that was their unique selling proposition.
Correct. For a long time, that was,
And-
they had
and-
the GFL before we did.
Yeah, and that would be why I would go with that instead of.
Yeah, and actually, it's a great strength of ours now, and I think that's also typified by. So the second largest ad agency in the world is TBWA. They do the Absolute Vodka ads. They're one of the burger companies. They did the famous. I don't know which one it was. The famous Mac versus PC ads was them. So they're the biggest division of Omnicom Group, and they're using us now for 3 petabytes across 80 locations, and they're using us with private cloud object storage, which is an in-house system. Now over 11,000 employees. So this is large, really a large-scale Nasuni implementation. They're using everything: global file lock. They're using synchronization. They're using for primary storage. So we just got this case study came in last week. So we're very proud of this implementation because it's one of our longer customers, and they've been seeing a lot of value from this. Of course, what they're sharing is a lot of, as you can imagine, the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. A lot of those applications for their clients are all done through Illustrator, Photoshop,
And video.
InDesign. Okay, and then the last one we'll just talk about quickly is, look, I just want to archive. I want to get my cool files to the cloud. And I want to leverage the fact you've got CIFS and NFS. I can just quickly get my files to the cloud and then access them when I need to. So maybe it's on a lower tier of cloud storage. Maybe it's Azure Cool or a lower tier of Amazon storage. And I can also do multi-site sync as well.
So
if I
you
can pull those all in.
support Glacier with this?
Are we on Glacier yet, John?
We are not on Glacier.
Not on Glacier.
You're not on Glacier. So that poses, any of those delayed access pose problems for us because we
Yes.
are, a file
You're
system. and
expecting.
You expect to see, the things in the file system.
So-
We have some ideas about how we could leverage it and get around it, but, more to come.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
And one of our catchphrases around this is, it's archive until it's not. Thank you, Ann, for that one. So, customers still want to get access. We see a lot of our customers, maybe it's a creative project that they want to reference for another client.
So what's the
And so
real
they can-
difference between primary and archive?
Cost of the back end?
Performance of the edge device?
Well, price, time to snap, what the snap intervals are allowed. And then depending on the type of archive volume you have, we will have limits on the percentage of reads per month. And so there are ways in which we're limiting some of that.
I'm sure it's a less expensive offering, and you have to have some way to keep it from
Exactly. That's exactly
people
what.
from.
Yep. We're trying to be flexible with that.
Yep.
And so the archive also requires an appliance sitting at whatever location you're going to access the data?
Correct. And if you want to do it from more than 2 locations, you'll need synchronize.
Can one location edge device support both primary and archive?
Yes, that actually gets kind of interesting. So a lot of this stuff is fairly new. We're going to be really announcing some of it, but we have this thing called a consolidated volume, which will allow both primary and archive to live on that. And we will look at we'll measure it based on access time rather than based on percentage of reads.
Okay.
So,
Were you asking in the context of one volume that can do both?
No.
Oh,
Different,
Edge
multiple
apply.
multiple
Oh, sorry.
mounts.
Two different mounts, and it's just.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
David's done now, but
And just leave that on. Those guys will take care of it.
yeah, great. You guys, you're anticipating. You got good questions, yeah. And you're the first to hear all this stuff. So.
Okay.
Good stuff. So who's using this? So ARA Diagnostics is one of the fastest growing imaging providers for healthcare in Texas, growing very, very quickly. They were trying to store their PACS images on ordinary NAS. They couldn't scale fast enough. They had issues of, I had to plan in advance, I had to buy excess capacity. But now with Azure as the object storage and the Nasuni, they can expand on demand, just increase the subscription, they get more capacity. They've been able to grow very, very quickly. They're saving a ton of money. They presented at the HIMSS conference how much they're saving with Azure and Nasuni compared to buying on-prem. It was over $1 million, they estimated. And they can also now pin in cache a study, a patient study. If that patient's coming in the next day, they can make sure it's pulled down and available in cache so it's available fast.
Oh, please tell me there's a REST API that lets me have an application hit the schedule, go, these patients are coming in, suck this into the edge.
To be honest, they did it without it, but we have that. We have that now, yeah.
And are you working with companies offering PACS software to hospitals as well? Canon, for instance? Or?
So right now we're working under Fujifilm PACS and Philips are the two that we've, of the customers that we have that we're under. A lot of those partnerships are not as, a lot of those manufacturers tend to be less interested in the storage partnerships. So if we find it easier to go out there without having to be certified anymore. So a lot of these came without the specific relationship built with the PACS manufacturers.
A lot of those guys now just, they say if you support CIFS or NFS.
Yeah, they're very agnostic about this. Yep.
So, and that's what we are. We're still looking like an ordinary NAS device.
Yeah.
So they're saving $1 million a year, and that's even with the bill for 1.5 petabytes projected in Azure?
Yeah, well, what's really interesting about this is, again, the cache is really the significant part here, right?
So you're eliminating the egress costs as much as you can.
Patient comes in, they put that data inside of Nasuni. They're probably seen over the next 3-4 months. That won't age out as quickly, and so you won't have to egress that back.
Right.
We're finding this. In fact, we actually just did the study with them. They benefit from cool storage.
Yeah.
Significantly. We had them on hot storage for a while. They're an integrated customer, like Howard was talking about.
Right.
They're now moving to what we call our BYOC. Cool storage is actually much more advantageous for them. We're finding that with a lot of our customers. That buffer at that cache is really, really important. It can significantly reduce the transaction costs.
What you're seeing basically is that once it's out of that cache device, it really is cold data and really doesn't need to have expensive storage on the back end.
That's right. Then it can be at the object store, and the transactions, even though they're there and you're accessible for these not edge use cases, but multi-site use cases, it doesn't make up for the fact that so much more of the reads are happening from that one device where it came from.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Todd Thomas is the CIO here. He'd be happy to talk to you guys. He's done interviews with Microsoft for their blogs. We have the HIMSS presentation he gave at the HIMSS show. We can share that with you too if you want to see it. That goes into detail on the costs.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, when it comes to a global file infrastructure, you've got to put a lot of stuff together today to achieve scalable file sharing, data protection, multi-site access, DR, off-site protection. You're cobbling all these kinds of products together. You're adding a lot of MPLS private WAN. You're adding Riverbed for WAN acceleration. There's a lot of stuff. You got a lot of cost, a lot of complexity, a lot of vendors in this mix. And what Nasuni and object storage together do is we just simplify all that right down to just two solutions. Object storage, our global file system, and our service makes it a lot easier, right? So it's all public internet access. David can talk to you in a great detail about how we make that very secure with our encryption and our compression and dedupe and chunking files into objects. This is really what the value is for customers: is lower cost, greater scale, simpler to manage, and it's better for the users because they get their files anywhere they want them.
How do you size the edge devices based on the performance requirements
Right. So we do it primarily based on IOPS requirements, and then we do it. So that's the sort of the primary first cut. How many users are on the site? So then we have a relationship between number of users, snap schedules, and what our hardware devices line up to. And then we look for the cache size and what we think. Oh, sorry.
You're gonna go-
And then we look for the cache size in the active data set. Generally, 1/8 to 1/10 would be what we look at between like what is the size of the volume that they're trying to put into Nasuni and what we think the cache size will be. We get a little bit more specific when it comes down to more highly collaborative cases, and we know that there's a lot of project data there, and so that will trump some of those kind of rough estimates. It's usually around that, about an 1/8 or a 1/10.
And on the edge device backend, that's one tier of storage, right?
On the edge device backend is yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if I want flash performance, I use flash. If I want slow, I use disk.
We used to have a
There's
hybrid,
no-
but now it's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or you can virtualize it and use whatever your backend.
You can virtualize and do whatever you want. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Like everyone
you-
else, we're leaning much more towards SSDs now.
But you guys aren't managing that.
No, not on the virtual side, no.
Yeah.
That's completely up to however you're managing your virtual
Okay.
environment.